We all have boulders in our lives. The boulder that I experienced 20 years ago, it was one of the greatest crises in my life, and also one of the greatest blessings. I just learned the word in Spanish, benediciones. That is how I see what happened for me. 20 years ago, when I walked out of that canyon, I left something behind, but the way that I see this is that I didn't lose anything, that I've only gained from this experience. Whatever your boulders are, and perhaps you're going through them right now, we all have them. They can be external to us. We feel, maybe as you do in the real estate market right now, high interest rates, high prices, inflation that's pinching people's finances. It's a difficult time to be doing what you're doing. And of course, we all have our personal boulders as well. That I've been through bullying when I was in my youth, dealt with depression and anxiety for most of my adult life. Of course, there was my amputation, but also then divorce, child custody proceedings, legal issues for most of the last 7 years. My dad, 5 years ago, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. He died in June of 2019. But one of the things that my dad gave to me was this legacy to understand that while we don't get to control what happens to us, we do get to make a choice about how we respond. And that's the choice, of course, the choice of many that I made while I was out in the canyon. That this was not going to be the worst thing that happened to me, but rather the best thing. And that's what I want to give to you. That's why I'm here today, to be able to share my story, so that maybe by the end of this, you might be able to also make a choice to embrace the boulders in your lives, to see them as an opportunity, to be able to even turn them to an advantage. Nothing is or is not except what we think of it. My yoga teacher yesterday said something that resonated with me, that we are the sky and everything else is the weather. The rain is not good or bad. The snow, the cold. I've been dealing with a lot of snow and cold in Colorado the last few days. It's not good or bad. That rock is not good or bad. But it is what we think of it. It's what we decide what we're going to do with it. All of these boulders that come in our lives, we get to make that choice. What are you going to do with your boulders? I believe that when you make that choice, you can see your boulders as the mechanism of growth that will help you become who you are here to become. And so I'm going to take us all out on this journey down to southern Utah. We'll go into the canyon together, and yes, it's going to get a little nasty. And it's going to be beautiful too. Our paths are guaranteed to be rocky in our lives and fulfilling. So let's go down to an area that perhaps some of you have visited. It looks, nothing like South Beach. Well, maybe there's some sand, actually. Not much water, but the sun is baking out in the desert. At this point in my life, I was 27 years old. I had been a mechanical engineer for about 5 years after graduating college. I graduated at the top of my class. I had this prestigious path ahead of me at Intel Corporation. This is the early 2000s, that I was living a very fulfilling life. And at the same time, I also knew that I wanted something more. And so I quit my career. I decided to leave engineering behind. I wanted to become a mountain guide. And I moved to Aspen, Colorado. And if you put those two things together, that I quit my job and moved to one of the most expensive places in the whole continent, yeah, maybe you doubt whether I actually finished any of those math classes that I took, but I was following my passion. I was living my dreams. And by April of 2003, I was ready to leave the mountains and the blizzards and the cold behind to get out for a spring break. So I'm heading out to this area in southeastern Utah where there are hundreds, if not 1,000, slot canyons. These are very narrow canyons, much more narrow than they are wide, deeper in some cases, as hundreds of feet deep, but very remote, and as austere as the desert is, it is also gorgeous. I drop into this canyon on Saturday, April 26th, with a plan to ride my bike 15 miles and then hike 15 miles back through the canyon to get back to my vehicle by the end of the day. I enter the white stripe that you see at the top of this picture here. That's the main fork of Blue John. And what do I see when I drop down in there? But there's two young women, Megan and Christy. You see them portrayed in the movie trailer. And of course, this is the moment when they're happened upon by James Franco. Sexiest man alive. They're all like, oh, it's James Franco! Not their reaction to me, unfortunately. But I did my best, and we dropped down into the canyon where we're having a great time, taking pictures of one another, sticking raven feathers in our hair, talking about our favorite guidebook authors, and we moved down through for several miles in the canyon, in this sunken passageway in the desert, until we part. And this is where I had the choice to go with them, to go get some hamburgers and beers over in Hanksville, a town about an hour away, or that I would continue down. I tried to get them to come with me, they tried to get me to come with them. We parted, but this is the first lesson that I take from the canyon, is that next time, Aaron, go with the girls. Okay, yeah. But I was on my own, moving through this sunken passage in the desert, as I mentioned. It's otherworldly beauty. And by the time it gets to about 2:30 in the afternoon, I'm on my own. I get to this spot. There are boulders that have fallen into the canyon, wedged between the walls. It's about 12 feet from where I'm standing to the continuing canyon floor. I want to be deliberate. I want to make sure that I can use those obstacles as stepping stones. You can almost imagine the staircase that I'm looking at here. But that I don't want a boulder to trapdoor from underneath me, even a broken ankle. At this point, I'm 8 miles from my truck, 7 miles from my bike, 5 miles, even by direct line of sight, to the one dirt road in the eastern half of 2 counties. This is still today an extraordinarily remote area. I test that rock, I kick at it, make sure that it's stable, I stand on it, and I begin to then slither myself over it. I'm grabbing to the back of it, reaching to where I'm full extension, just to where I can get to the next boulder in the sequence, and all of a sudden that rock pulls loose. I fall to the ground in the bottom of the canyon. I have only a split second. The rock is falling from my head. I put my hands up to try to protect my skull, get myself out of the way, but the rock smashes into my left hand, it ricochets, it smashes into my right hand, it rebounds. And in that moment, my right arm slips into the gap between the boulder and the canyon wall. Just as now those walls taper down in this constriction right in front of my chest, and the rock slams, becoming wedged between the walls once more, about 7 feet down. And now this time, it's ensnared my right arm from my wrist down to my fingertips in this impossibly small shadow of space between the boulder and the canyon. We'll take a breath. We'll take a look at a clip from the film. We're going to see James Franco encounter the boulder, and we'll see if those good looks can save him this time. let's come back to the metaphor. Because I know for all of the people in this room, I might be the only one who's ever had a big chunk of sandstone fall on a body part. But all of us have been there. We all know what that feels like, to experience fear, pain, panic, adrenaline, fight or flight kicking in, that we feel spun up and even we lose control. And so what do we do in those moments? Well, for me, as I was having my world turned upside down, my life turned inside out. And again, you've all been there too. Well, I went into a fury. I started trying to lift the rock, trying to pull it, trying to, at some point, punch it, and cursing at it as if I could just offend it into letting me go. But of course, all of that's a waste. When we react with resistance, it just causes suffering. I first had to come to at least a momentary acceptance of my situation before I could even start to move forward. I calmed myself down, and I want to offer this because this acronym of STOP, S-T-O-P, that as any of us are in that moment of crisis, we have our minds, we have our breath. And so to stop, take a few deep breaths, get a pause, find some distance between our emotions, the circumstances that we're in, and remember that, okay, I'm still here, I'm still breathing. And then to T, move on to that next step, to think, to use our higher brain function, not just the animalistic response to flee or to start punching, but to use our rational problem-solving brains. To O, make some observations, come up with some options, and P, decide on a plan. S-T-O-P. For me in this situation, as I start looking around in the canyon, and I'm breathing, as I mentioned about being a mechanical engineer, I know how to problem solve, to brainstorm. I'm looking at what else is around me. And here, as we bring the images back up, you can see there are other boulders up above. Maybe I could use some of those to build an anchor and try to use my canyoneering gear, my ropes and equipment to try to lift the rock off of my arm. I'm thinking it through about, well, there's a gap in the rocks way above me that I can see a little bit of sky, perhaps that I'd be able to signal a passing airplane or to shout for help, or maybe Megan and Christy would come back at some point to help save me. Or from where I'm standing, there are these other rocks down below. Maybe I could use one of those rocks to try to smash the bigger rock and to get myself free. As I'm looking at what's in front of me here, I know, that's a real photo I took of my arm, that possibly small shadow, the pain, of course, yeah. But I was able to move beyond the pain relatively quickly. This pain is just information, and once you've understood the information, you can stop listening to it. An alarm goes off at the airport, somebody pushes the wrong door, and after 5 minutes, yeah, it's still going off, but nobody's hearing it any longer. The same for me. I was able to set that aside, to compartmentalize, and I'm thinking about the knife that I have in my backpack, that maybe I would be able to carve my way through the rock. And then at the same time, I understand, even within the first hour that I'm trapped, I even said it out loud, Aaron, you're gonna have to cut your arm off. And how did I respond to that? By saying out loud, I don't wanna cut my arm off. Because in the beginning, that's the answer. Again, resistance. But how true is it that we understand with intuition what we have to do, and we don't want to? I get it. I mean, that's one of the biggest boulders in our lives, is overcoming inertia, a fear of taking action, because we're afraid of maybe of what other people will think. We're afraid of being rejected, that we're afraid of maybe a wasted effort that won't give us what we want. We're afraid at its root that, are we even good enough? to overcome fear, to take action in the face of fear. It demands a lot of us, but we have that. For now, though, if that's on the list, it's at the bottom of the list. And I start by trying to carve through the rock. And here on this screen, actually here in the middle, I'll use the pointer to see that black circle that's around a slightly pinker section of the rock right above my wrist for the first afternoon, carving at the rock, chipping away, trying to pry loose little bits of sandstone for the first night, working by headlamp. 10 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours that I've been out there in the desert. And in all of that time, I removed half of a golf ball of material from that boulder. I'm gonna have to remove more like half of a football to get free. And it's gonna take a month. I don't have a month. I have 2 days before I'm out of water. I have at the time that I became trapped 1 liter of water left. I have 2 little burritos that I bought at a convenience store. Very portable snacks in the desert. All the rest of my food and water was gone before I got to this spot. I was already 3/4 of the way through my day, so of course I only had some limited supplies left. I'm gonna have to ration all of that. But it's not going to help me to survive for a month, let alone, I mean, probably not even a week, probably only a couple of days before I'm dead. And so my first option, trying to excavate my arm, that fails. And I move on, and here you can see the evidence with my ropes, trying to rig up an anchor, trying to lift the rock off my arm. I built a 3-to-1, a 5-to-1, a 6-to-1 mechanical advantage system. But I have this stretchable dynamic climbing rope, which is great if you're up on the side of a cliff, you fall and you want it to catch you. You need that bungee cord effect so that all the force doesn't snap your spine. But in this application, it's trying to lift a bowling ball with a rubber band. It just keeps stretching and stretching and stretching, and so I've created a mechanical disadvantage system. That option fails. I'd be better off just trying to lift the rock, but of course that's futile as well. Waiting for help. Megan and Christy aren't coming back. They think I've just flaked out. The other canyoneers, there aren't any. Only a couple dozen people back in 2003 would get down to this part of Blue John Canyon, maybe on a weekend, maybe by midday, but midday comes and Sunday, it's gone, early afternoon, and I know I'll be a skeleton before somebody finds me at the bottom of this canyon. And I get into fear, but wait a minute, didn't you tell someone where you were going, and wouldn't there be rescue coming to help you? When I would go out in the wintertime to climb our highest mountains in Colorado that are more than 4,000 meters above sea level, 14,000 feet up into the atmosphere, yes, I left word about my itinerary, information on who to call if I didn't show up at the right moment. That all of this was something I did not do on this day. This was a walk in the park. So I'm out in the bottom of the most remote hole that you could find without anyone even knowing what state I was in. But I made these choices and understanding I created this. So often we play a role in our circumstances and finding ourselves where we are. We made choices that got us there, but that is empowering because those choices that got us there, that means we can make new choices that will move us forward. I was accountable, and I understood that no one's coming to save me. And so by 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, having been out in the desert for 30 hours now, I try and I get out my knife. And in this image, you can actually see on the left side of the ropes, there's a black piece of almost circular webbing that's sitting on top of the boulder. That's my tourniquet. I wrap that stretchable, thin neoprene around my arm. I tie it off with my teeth in my left hand. I clip a metal snap-link carabiner through it. I start to twist, cranking it down, clipping that off to some other webbing around my biceps. So I've got this improvised staunching device. it'll mitigate the blood loss. But as I hold the knife to my skin, I hear a voice in my head say, it's just a slow act of suicide here. And I know, slow act of suicide. With the tourniquet even, I'll still bleed to death well before I make it out of the canyon. Here from this point, 8 miles, and then an 800 vertical foot climb to get out of the bottom of the canyon back to my vehicle, and then a 60-mile drive down winding washboarded dirt roads. And why did I have to buy a stick lift? That's how this is going to end. Me trying to drive out of the desert and then like shifting and so I put the knife down, I took the tourniquet off, and now I'm out of options. And what do you do when you're out of options? For me, it was clear. It was time to say goodbye. I reach in my backpack, I get out my little video camcorder, I hold it up in front of me, and as I look into that lens, I ask, whoever finds this, please get it to my parents, Donna and Larry Ralston, Centennial, Colorado. I'd appreciate it. Be sure of it. And then I look into that camera lens, and I want to ask you, because I'm no longer standing in the bottom of a canyon, I'm standing in my grave. What would you say? And who would you say it to? The answers, if you're standing in your grave, the answers to those questions, I believe they tell us exactly what is important in our lives. As sad and as somber as it is to consider, this is also the very first moment when that boulder gave me the first gift, this experience. My blessing. Mom, Dad, I love you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I go out looking for adventure, trying to prove something about myself. This is dumb. It's so dumb. Sonia, please. Bring honor to our family. Do great things with your life. I love you. To say, I love you. And I'm sorry. To say thank you to the most important people, saying those most important things. That is how I connected to my source. All of you have your source too, your why. What is it that you're doing all of this for? And I know, as much as it says at the end of the movie trailer there, that there's no force on earth more powerful than the will to live. If I could change one letter, what I was experiencing is that there's no force on earth more powerful than the will to love. By looking through that lens, talking to my loved ones, it was connecting in love. And from that, it gave me everything: strength, courage, grit, determination, perseverance, resolve. It was everything that I could possibly need. It was there, and it was with me because of the relationships in my life. I was understanding, and I even said under that tape, that it's not about what you do, Aron. It's about who you are, how you love. That was such a gift. A blessing from that boulder. I would go on having learned perhaps what the meaning of life is. It would be now the second afternoon, the second night. The temperature would drop in the darkness to just a couple degrees above freezing. And I know for you here in Miami, 36 degrees is like your popsicle. I was there in shorts and a t-shirt. And so I'm convulsing with hypothermia for 8 9, 10 hours. The third morning, as the sun comes back up over the desert, I'm still there. But I understand that the calculus of all of this has shifted. That I'm losing 7 pounds per 24-hour period. And I know that sounds like, ooh, a great alternative to Ozempic. No, it's the exact opposite. This is, I'm falling apart at the seams. And I understand, okay, the possibility that I die on the way out of here, that's starting to look pretty good over the certainty of dying in this spot. So I put the tourniquet on, I get the knife back out, I hold it to my arm, and this time I start like harder, faster, but nothing. Well, not nothing. Actually, I thought I saw a little curl of smoke come up from my arm. I'm starting a fire. The knife was so dull, I couldn't cut through the skin. It couldn't even cut through the hair on the skin. How can you cut your arm off if the knife is too dull to even get through the skin? You can't. You can't. I hit bottom. Despair. It was the darkest that I've ever experienced in my life. But what did I do? I get out that camera, I turn it on, and I talk to my parents, my sister, my extended family, my chosen family, all of my best friends, and by looking through that lens, I'm with them, they're with me, and I'm lifted up. The relationships that we have, our community, our loved ones, this is who is with us. This is who we turn to. This is who we invest in and who they invest in us. And I knew I was going to see this through. I was shifted out of the despair by saying thank you to all of these people that were on that tape. I learned a gift from that boulder that you cannot simultaneously hold profound despair and profound gratitude in your heart at the same time. That one displaces the other. And so if you make a choice to cultivate gratitude and bring that into your life, to remind you about things that are going well, about what's really important, and about how it gives us so much. And maybe it even puts a smile on our faces in the middle of a dark time. I was more isolated than a human being can be on this planet, and at the same time, was I alone? Not at all. That gift carries me through the third day, the third night, more shivering, convulsing. It's another 7 pounds stripped off. I was 160 pounds when I walked into that canyon at the peak of my physical fitness. I didn't have a lot to lose. There was nothing to shed, and yet I'm shedding and shedding and shedding, being stripped away by the cold, the dehydration, the starvation, the infection that's creeping into my body and my arm. It was the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse coming for me. And which one would win? I knew I was about to find out. And that's why on the 4th morning, when all of a sudden a light bulb goes off, and I understand, wait, you don't just hold a knife like a saw, Aaron, you can also hold it like a dagger. And yeah, you know the sound effect. And I stab myself. But, oh, I hear it. No, this was, yeah! Because I did it. I got through the skin. I could do this. I could get out of here. Okay, stop. S-T-O-P. Deep breaths. Think. Observe. What am I up against? What's in here? What do I have to do to get through my arm? To be able to cut, I have to know what I'm cutting. And I probe with the knife tip. And then it touches something hard. Yeah, maybe you paid attention in biology a little better than I did. The bone. Of course, the bone. If I thought I had bottom before, now I found some sort of like sub-basement to it, because how can you cut your arm off with a knife? It's too dull to get through the bone. You can't. I'd sooner be able to slice through the boulder than cut through the bone. So, again, darkness, enveloping, enshrouding me in despair. But what do? One more time, I get my camera out, I start talking to my parents, my sister, my loved ones, and I am buoyed once again. There are even smiles captured on that videotape as I'm saying thank you. I'm out of water now. I mean, here it is, the fourth day. I had one little liter that was gone. And now I'm left with the only other fluid that I have in the canyon. And yeah, you can do the math on that. I've been saving my urine in one of my other Nalgene bottles. And this we come to a grand existential question. I had one last mummified bite of burrito, dried out in the desert air. And so to dunk, or not to dunk. Yeah, worst picnic lunch ever. I dunked, and I drank. And that's how bad it was. It was only going to get worse. I mean, the hallmark of a doomed man is that they're drinking their own urine. And so I have a pretty good perspective on what constitutes a bad day. Another gift. Last night, my flight was delayed coming in. It was 2 a.m. before I made it to my bed. And they're like, but come on, how bad was it? Did you have to drink your own urine today? Yeah, maybe it's not so bad. But yeah, it was that bad and it was going to get worse, and I knew it. But I've got an open wound in my arm. Maybe there's an opportunity there, because why wait for it? I could just keep cutting on purpose to bleed to death and just be done. Why wouldn't you? I don't mean to evangelize, to tell you that I've got it figured out or say that what I do is right. But this is a moment where I prayed. I asked for guidance. Should I cut myself or not? And I found my answer. And whatever it is, however you find your answers, practice that. Because that is a tool for you to use, to turn to, and you never know when you're going to need it. But for me, I found my answer, and that it was that I was not going to take action against myself. I was not going to cut myself to bleed to death. I was going to see this through to the end. I was going to do everything I possibly could to give myself the opportunity to get home to my family. So that fourth day turns into the fourth night, the fifth day. It's been 90 hours. 95 hours now. The sun comes back up and it's passing through the day. 100 hours that I've been out there alone in the desert without not even a minute of sleep. I've lost at this point over 30 pounds. I knew it didn't matter anymore. If I drink my urine, if I don't, if I cut my arm, if I don't, it's really not up to me anymore. And to give up, I wouldn't say that I had given up hope, but I gave up control. And this is an idea that, especially for entrepreneurs, type A, folks that think if we just try a little harder, if we give it a little bit more, we exert our free will, that we can get what we want. So that this is how the world works. And sometimes the path is to surrender. That we have to make a choice here. And this was, again, a gift from the rock, is I came to understand that the more that we can align ourselves with the will of the universe, the greater peace we can have in our lives. And we always have this choice, whether to keep frustrating ourselves to try to get what we want, or perhaps to have peace. So by the fifth day, I chose peace. I was abiding through this time, 110 hours now, 115, the sun goes down, the fifth night arrives. I understand it's the last night. I'm not going to make it through this. I know with such certainty that I take the knife and I carve into the wall above my left shoulder the letters of my name, A-R-O-N. O-C-T 75. A-P-R 03. And at the top, R-I-P. I'm standing in my grave. I've said my goodbyes, left my will and testament, and now I have my epitaph. And that's pretty much the trifecta of demise. I was ready and it was okay. I still girded myself against the cold, but I knew that when that cold ended and I felt warmth come over my body, as you do when you die of exposure. People are found in blizzards with their jackets and hats taken off because they get this false warmth that comes over them. I waited for that. Oh, I couldn't wait for it. And eventually, shivering there, these minutes drag on into infinite stretches of time. But I'm interrupted. My watch on my backpack strap was letting me know that it was midnight, that day 5 had become day 6, that moreover, the calendar not only was Wednesday, now Thursday, but April 30th has just become May 1st. And now my epitaph's outdated. There are those days when nothing goes your way. But come on, I have to decide whether I scratch out April and carve May instead, and just no, leave it. I know there's not a manual for this. It's not like the instructions to follow. But I say out loud, you're never going to see the dawn. And I understand. Yeah, again, okay. I made it past midnight. I returned the shivering. And finally that warmth comes. Not only the warmth, but there's no longer a thirst. I'm no longer feeling pain. That in fact I'm even free from the rock. And here I step into somewhat a passageway that the wall opens up, and I'm stepping out into a living room where that wall closes off behind me. Just as I see my body still there by the boulder. But here I am now, with a little boy, playing with a truck, and a red shirt and blonde hair. He hasn't seen me yet, but I'm watching myself with eyes floating behind my head as I crouch down. He comes bowling into me as I scoop him up with my left hand and a handless right arm. And we dance, holding each other as he's grabbing onto me, and I'm looking into each other's eyes without a word between us, but his beautiful, brilliant blue eyes say it all. Daddy, let's play. And I understand. Even in the next moment, it's gone, and I'm back at the rock, and I'm shivering worse than ever, but that little boy has just changed everything, because this is a clear vision, a premonition of a future son that someday I might see in my life, and that means that if that's going to be true, I have to get out of here. I'm going to get out of here. And 124 hours of being out there in the desert alone, the sun comes back up, and because of that little child, I saw the dawn that I had said I wasn't going to see. Again, connection, love, the source of everything that we need. It got me through. But still, okay, 125 hours. I'm going to get out of here, but how? How can we cut your arm off? The knife is too dull to cut through the bone. You can't. 126 hours until 127 hours. Now talk about eureka moments and light bulbs going off. This was stadium lights. Megawatts of electricity running through my brain. That's it. You don't have to cut the bone, Aron. Use the boulder. Break the bone. Yeah, I get it. But what do? A smile comes across my face. And I understand this is it. This is how I'm going to get out of here. There's no reluctance or resistance at all. I start pushing against the rock, bending my arm. Crack! That smile gets bigger. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to get home. I'm going to get a hug from my mom. I'm going to someday meet that little boy. And that's when I realized there are actually 2 bones in your forearm. Well, again, I'm glad you think that's funny. Again? Yeah, again. Reverse the forces. That's the mechanical engineer talking to me, as I understand. Bending that down. This is up now. I reach over the boulder, push with my feet. Yeah, it echoed like that in the canyon, like a starter pistol being fired. But again, that smile gets bigger as I know I've gotten through the bones. It's just the soft tissues now. And I move to the knife. Not the 3-inch long blade that I dulled against the wall, but this little 1.5-inch long blade. And I say out loud as I hold it to my skin. I look to my watch, 10:36 a.m. on May 1st. Here we go, Aron, you're in it now. And I start, and I felt it. I would feel every step of this process. And yet with every step, it was a step closer to my goal. I was creating the new version of myself. Just like all of you are working towards your goals. It's hard, it's painful at times, but we move through it with the right mindset. We do it with a smile because I'm taking those steps and I'm getting there, I'm making that progress, and then what? Oh, the nerve. I wasn't smiling. But what? I'm gonna stop now? No. I flipped the knife. As I plucked through it, yeah, it felt like I had just somehow thrust my arm into a cauldron of magma. Incinerate, vaporized my arm up to my, but I never cried out. There were no tears. I never even said, ow. A few deep breaths, stop, breathe, think. I opened my eyes. And now it's time to call Guinness, because I got a world record going on here. This smile is the biggest smile I think it could be humanly possible, because everything in my life is now possible. It's all there in front of me. I have to stretch just to get the last little piece of skin that's left there. My feet move. For the first time in 6 days, my feet move. And I step out of my grave and into my life again. And of course, that's when I almost pass out. If you could take every moment of joy, of delight, of pleasure, of happiness that you ever experience in your life, all put it together, have it all taken away, but then to be given back to it, yeah, it's too much to handle. Well, the clock was running. I had to get out of there, but there was one more thing that I did before I left. I got my camera out, and as I picked it up and I held it in front of me, it was not pointed towards me, but rather I oriented the scene in front of me. I have the tourniquet on, my arm is slung to my chest, and I say out loud as I push that camera shutter button, thank you. Yeah, the bloodied hands, sticky bone ends, all that. Good riddance, trash. What I'm saying, thank you to the boulder, that rock, for what it's given me, to understand what's important in life, to understand what's possible in life, to know what's extraordinary about being alive, that smile. Benediciones. As I move out through the canyon, I get to the rappel, I lower myself down that drop off. I'm still marching my way out, but I stop to take a photo. I'm still here. In the spectrum of experience that is between tragedy, that moves through transformation, that we get to triumph by making these choices, it's enough to sometimes just to still be here. I had 8 miles to go. I have to hike one more mile, one more step, to move out through this canyon. I'm gonna have a heart attack. I know I'm out of water, 5 miles, 6 miles. It's been 5 hours since I amputated my arm. How am I even still alive? And drip, 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 the loss of blood. The helicopter circles overhead. And I know it looks like a black helicopter, but what it really was, I'm sorry, I should have warned you to bring Kleenex. My mom. I did what I did, but it was only because of what my mom did that got me out of there. And who among us would be here if it weren't for our moms? But it wasn't just her, it was my family, what they all did to pull me through. Of course, the medical professionals, the doctors, eventually the prosthetists, the therapists that would help me to get back to my life. And then with my new life, what do? I start designing apparatus to get back to climbing so that I can finish my passion to climb all of the highest mountains in Colorado in the wintertime. Well, thank you. And for those of you not applauding, I get it. this is why we don't go outside, Aron. No, but for me, that passion, I had learned from this. I learned even that I hadn't done this alone. It was only because of all the people, my team, the loved ones that I had talked with, who were there to support me, that they got me back. And today, I still love to adventure and be in the outdoors, but it's not just on my own, it's with my partner, Allison, the love of my life in the last 5.5 years. It doesn't matter if we're on a mountaintop. We're taking our pandemic puppy, Frankie the adventure dachshund, out for a walk. That we're doing a puzzle or making a meal together to just snuggle up, watch a show by the fire. Everything is everything when it's infused with love. I've been back to that canyon so many times now, 15 times over the last 20 years. Wow. And I stand there, and I put my arm where I was trapped. The boulder is still there. And I cry. But it is not tears of loss or tears of grief or tears of sorrow. It is tears of gratitude as I say thank you, thank you, thank you to that boulder over and over again for what it has given me. That appreciation for what's important, to know these people, my family and my friends, and that have them in my life. And these days, to understand with these two. Yeah. And if you're keeping score, yes, blonde hair, blue eyes. He is the little courageous lion. We named him Leo, who showed up for me that night, and I met in that spot. And this is last April, on the 20th anniversary of my entrapment, when we went back there together with Elizabeth, his younger sister, and we got to stand in that spot where I met him the first time all these years ago. And of course, they didn't care. That's how kids are. They were like scrambling around and fighting over who wanted to take the pictures and just having their fun. But I know, if it had to happen again, I'd cut my other hand off with an even bigger smile this time in order to get back to them, to protect the relationship that I have with them. And there's people in your lives that you would do it for too. And that's the thing. That's where it all comes from. And so you are going to meet more boulders in your life. The boulder that's there behind us, my boulder, that's not the first, not the last, not even the biggest boulder that I have encountered. But with our family's love that gives us the strength, the courage, the determination, the grit, the resilience, all of the things that we need, that is how we take our boulders and turn them into benediciones. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.